Hey guys, this is EckhartsLadder. Hello and welcome to another video. Now, I want today's discussion to be relatively salt and flame free. We are talking about a topic that tends to, at times, bring out the worst in people, so make sure, whichever way you fall down on this topic, to be civil in the comments. The people you're talking to are fellow people and fellow Star Wars fans. There's no need to be rude to them. There is some, well, that's putting it lightly, but there is some fan controversy regarding the new Star Wars sequel trilogy. A lot of people like the movies, a lot of people don't like the movies, and there's a lot of effort spent online critiquing them, pointing out the flaws people see, arguing about what they wish would have happened, and I've done that plenty of times. Many videos on this channel have been dedicated to things that I don't like about the new Star Wars movie. And you know what? That's completely fine. I'm not somebody who says you can't criticize Star Wars. I think that's a little bit lame. But I also want to talk about options, because ultimately there's nothing you can do to change the Star Wars sequel trilogy. There's not some secret JJ edit or George Lucas cut of the Star Wars sequels that will somehow make you like them if you don't already. But there are other options for content that can fill that void if you are one of those people. Let's talk about Star Wars Legends, I say like a drug dealer at a high school party trying to sell some weed. As most of you know, Legends was the expanded universe before the Disney buyout of Lucasfilm. It contained lots of Star Wars Legends works, everything from books and comics and TV shows and video games, all of which told a story that took place before, during, and after the Star Wars original and prequel trilogies. I'm one of those people that prefers the broad strokes of the post-Endor Legends universe, so that's what I want to talk about first, because the period after Endor is really the closest we get to a sequel trilogy in Legends. You know, we see the fate of all of our favorite film characters, we see the children of Han, Luke, and Leia, and also it's my favorite era. So let's talk about where you can start. If you're brand new to the Star Wars Legends expanded universe, which I know a lot of you are outside of my videos, I always recommend that you start with some of the greatest Star Wars novels ever written, the Thrawn trilogy. The Thrawn trilogy was written by Timothy Zahn in the early 90s, and it was basically what kickstarted the revitalization of the Star Wars expanded universe. It told the story of Grand Admiral Thrawn emerging from the unknown regions to attack the New Republic after the Empire has crumbled, and sees the introduction of lots of major characters which would go on to basically be the face of Star Wars Legends, including Mara Jade, Talon Karrde, the Solo twins Jacen and Jaina, and more. The interesting thing about the Thrawn trilogy is just how well written it is, not only for a Star Wars book, but for a science fiction or space fantasy book generally. The three Thrawn books, which are Heir to the Empire, Dark Force Rising, and The Last Command, do something that even the original trilogy doesn't do well in my opinion. Little hints dropped in the first book pay off in major ways later on. This is a series that was very clearly completely thought out and pre-written by the time the first book was being finalized. It feels complete. There's no plot threads that are dropped, and that's something that we very rarely get, especially now where it seems like movies are kind of forced into sequels later on. I really don't want to tell you what happens in the Thrawn trilogy because you could experience it yourself, but even though we don't have Emperor Palpatine as a villain, Thrawn himself is very compelling. The Force still presents Luke with a powerful enemy, and it's the basis of a phenomenal period in Star Wars lore in my opinion, because the Thrawn trilogy sets up a lot of what comes afterwards, and I want to talk about that next. One brief note before I continue is that I cannot recommend enough the audiobook versions of the Thrawn trilogy, particularly the 20th anniversary unabridged version narrated by Mark Thompson, and you can also grab these books on Audible at audibletrial.com/EckhartsLadder if you're interested, or honestly for free at your local library. I will also mention as well that I've got a Star Wars Expanded Universe book club where every week we read together and discuss a Star Wars Legends novel. We've already done the Thrawn trilogy, but it's all there. It's called Tapcaf Transmissions. I'll also link to that down below, but you can also just Google it on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever else. Anyway, I'm going to continue focusing on books because in my opinion they do a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to telling an overall story, especially when it comes to the main trilogy characters. So there are two distinct eras of publishing in the Star Wars Expanded Universe. There was the Bantam era, where novels were published by Bantam, then the Del Rey era, where novels were published by Del Rey, and they still are, although Del Rey and Bantam are now owned by the same company anyway. But the Bantam era was the early Star Wars Legends stuff. stuff. Basically, everything up until the Yuuzhan Vong War was Bantam. A lot of the stories told in this time period are not necessary to understand the overall plot of what happened to the main trilogy characters, but they're still really fun. The Jedi Academy trilogy tells the story of Luke founding his new Jedi Praxium and teaching his first class of students. The X-Wing novels are loved among fans and tell the stories of Wraith and Rogue Squadron, and just generally we see the New Republic especially take on a variety of threats from terrorists to Imperial warlords, and there's a lot of fun to be had there. The Bantam era books have a really special place in my heart. When it comes to required reading though, if you're staying in this time period, at least make sure you pick up the Thrawn duology. So the Thrawn duology is set about a decade after the Thrawn trilogy, and really tidies up and almost ends the war between the New Republic and the Empire, and it prepares the galaxy for the next big conflict, which is the 19-book long Yuuzhan Vong War. And yeah, the New Jedi Order, which was the name for the Yuuzhan Vong series, is 19 books long plus a comic, so it can be overwhelming. Before I move into that later era though, I will also mention that there are many really important comic books and video games set in the New Republic era, I'll call it, including Dark Empire, which tells the story of Palpatine coming back in a clone body, which you'll find very familiar to Episode 9. You've got hundreds of comics, from the old Marvel issues to Crimson Empire and more. There are video games like Jedi Knight, and there's just a lot to explore. However, if we continue moving on into the Del Rey era of books, we've got a few major series here. We've got, as I mentioned, the Yuuzhan Vong War. After that, we get the Swarm War, which in my opinion is skippable. Then Legacy of the Force, another big 9-book series, is all about Jacen Solo, son of Han and Leia. I don't want to say anything more than that because that goes into spoiler territory. Then we also have Fate of the Jedi, which is all about Abeloth and sort of the New Republic's transformation into the Galactic Alliance, which has happened in the Yuuzhan Vong War, and kind of the future of the galaxy. And by that point, we're 40 years after A New Hope. We pretty much know where all of the major characters end up. Some have even died. My point is, there's a lot of story to be in here, a story that was crafted literally over decades, and a story that has some of my favorite Star Wars moments and plots within it. I love the characters of Jacen and Jaina Solo, Luke Skywalker, Mara Jade, Talon Karrde, Grand Admiral Thrawn, Admiral Pellaeon. If you don't like the Star Wars movies, if you legitimately do not like the sequel trilogy, but you still have that love of Star Wars alive, well, there are other options. And if you don't like that era, or you're one of the people I've never met who don't like the Thrawn trilogy, well, you can always go a few thousand years in the future and go head first into the Old Republic era, or go tens of thousands of years into the future and learn about what came even before that. Or you can learn about stuff that happened during the prequels, or you can even go to Star Wars canon and maybe wait patiently for the High Republic, or the Mandalorian, or the Clone Wars, or whatever else. There's a lot in Star Wars to like, so if you're just finding you're spending a lot of time thinking about the stuff that you hate, maybe try something else. That's just my little bit of unsolicited advice for today. Till next time, guys, have a good one. May the Force be with you.